Welcome to the Low Tox Life podcast.
There are a lot of plants that are, quote, rapamycin mimetics. So what I'm saying is you don't have to necessarily take the drug called rapamycin, but rapamycin only works by virtue of its actions on what's known as the cyclic AMPK pathway. You've probably heard of that, the cyclic adenosine monophosphate kinase pathway. And so it works on that pathway, which can be beneficial for cellular longevity and protecting cellular integrity. But there are rapamycin mimetics in the plant world.
Such a good show ahead today. I'm Alex Stewart, your host, founder of Low Tox Life, and I'm thrilled to welcome both new and long-time listeners to the show. Now, Ric is an extraordinary human. One would think that after 30 years of building one of the biggest herbal medicine supplement companies in the world, you would toddle off into the sunset and retire. But no, when you are purpose and legacy led, like Ric is, you continue the work that you started in a new chapter, and that chapter has been through regenerative agriculture and research and starting to see the benefits of regenerative techniques in increasing the power of the herbs that we might be taking every day. The results are astounding, and this show was truly inspiring to look under the hood at what it means to run a good business, as well as some of that nerdy technical stuff we love about natural medicine, holistic approaches, and plant active ingredients. If a healthy home is your priority right now, then Oz Climate, our major podcast partner, without whom we could not put this show on every week, has got you covered with 10% off for Aussies. Code LowToxLife. Dehumidifying is a particular passion of mine because it helps us prevent moisture, excess humidity, and of course, therefore, mold in our indoor environments. Of course, if you ever have a leak or a flood, contact a mold technician or a building biologist. But for everyday living, you would be surprised the impact that good dehumidification can make in your indoor environment. I've done a ton of reels on this to help you know how long, what size of unit, how many units, different floor plans. Everything's there on my Instagram at LowToxLife, and you'll see all the white background tiles are part of a humidity literacy series. I hope it helps you. Head to ozclimate.com.au. They have heating and cooling solutions, amazing dehumidifiers, and their Winix air purifier range. Ric, hello. It is fantastic to have you joining us today.
Hi, Alex. Thanks for having me.
Where do we start? My gosh, your body of work. I'm going to ask first herbs, herbal medicine. Did you grow up in the kind of family where it was hippy dippy and grandma was always mixing something up for coughs, or did you find a more complementary style of looking after the body later?
Yeah, my journey really started in college. I was a philosophy student in college,
Mm.
and I was having trouble. I was having trouble understanding the source of the universe and who was God, and so I really wanted to quite find some answers there. And I went out to one night to meditate, and I meditated all night. And the only thing that came back to me, Alex, was if you really want to know the source of the universe, you need to understand and know plants.
Mm.
And that was my trigger. That was what inspired me to go to school, to leave the school I was at and go and study herbs.
Wow. And isn't it interesting that it was important for you to be at that school because philosophy in itself is asking the bigger questions. How important do you think that is as you look at our world today? And I know you travel between the States and Costa Rica. This this seeming divide and the seeming acceleration of hating on different people and not trying to understand different people instead, who grow up differently, who, if you think back to that philosophy and it getting to ask you the bigger questions, I really feel like it should be a compulsory subject for us all to broach at some point in our lives because it's so special. What did that do for you? I mean, it looks like it literally led you to herbs in your case.
It did lead me to herbs, and I went on to study at the school and many schools actually, herbal school, and then the naturopathic school, and then I studied some diagnostic procedures in Ayurvedic medicine and Chinese medicine and medical iris diagnosis. So I put it all together, and then it became, the foundation for a pretty successful practice over 10 years
Mm.
after I received all that education. I think I might have seen about 10,000 patients after all of that. And, but the thing about it was, I look back at my classroom learning, and I look back at I'll call it the nature classroom learning, where you're out with the plants and studying, and you know that kind of learning has a lot of subjective quality to it. You need to show up and be present. You need to allow your intuition, your instinct, your inner subjective aspect of gaining knowledge to awaken, and that's where I really feel I excelled.
Hmm. And you mentioned so many different types of education. A lot of people pick one and go deep. Um, why do you think you felt it was important to study across all of those traditions and disciplines?
Well, in naturopathic school, you have a broad 4-year education of,
Mm.
naturopathic medicine, but the aspect of botanical medicine is limited. So if you really want to dive deep into botanical medicine, you have to supplement your education, and which is what I did on many occasions, and that just became my focus. A lot of people go into a broader naturopathic practice. I really went into a botanical practice because I really was attracted to plants.
Mm. And were there early plants that you thought, oh my gosh, this is so powerful, um, that have remained favorites?
Oh, well, I must tell you that they have changed over the years, but in those early days, I recall marshmallow being one of my favorite,
Oh, I love
hawthorn being one
marshmallow.
of my favorite, hawthorn
Hmm.
leaf, flower, and berry. Those are two that stand out. And today it's a little bit different, but um, you know, I have many favorites right now.
Now, you just said hawthorn, leaf, flower, and berry. Could you unpack for us the difference between those three in that one plant and what they would do?
Well, they basically all serve a similar function in terms of how I might use them, in terms of supporting the vascular system and acting as antioxidants to protect the vascular system and to promote vascular integrity and to promote the heart. So when you look at hawthorn berry, and the trick is really is if you're going to harvest hawthorn flower and leaf, you need to harvest that cluster of leaf and flower at the budding stage. And we've done a lot of research in terms of harvest cycles on that part of the plant, where you get the highest concentration of anthocyanidins, which are the flavonoid like molecules, which are very protective to the body. And, you know, the hawthorn berry itself is very good for the shen, which is the energy component of the heart, the spiritual component of the heart. And the leaf and flower has a lot of medicinal value supporting the overall cardiovascular system. So it's
Hmm.
good to combine them together.
Good to combine them together. So, and when you said the Shen, the spirit of the heart, what might someone be experiencing that a herbal practitioner would go straight for that then?
Well, a practitioner who's able to diagnose perhaps through the pulse,
Mm.
good diagnostician in TCM, Chinese medicine, might be able to diagnose what is going on if a person is experiencing anxiety, a little insomnia. Those are two of the bigger presentations: anxiety, insomnia, maybe a bit of emotional, distraughtness that could disturb the heart energy. And so I think that's what I look for. And, how do you calm that energy down? And that's the
Mm.
trick, is calming it down.
Gosh, I just went straight to midlife women in perimenopause flux. That just sounds like something we need to all be looking into. Okay, so you mentioned it's changed over the years. Is that because, as a human, as Rick, or as a practitioner, a business builder in the herbal space, you've discovered more? I mean, you have a whole research facility. Is it the wonder of just continuing to discover more and more amazing things that the plant world can offer us?
You're asking very insightful questions because for me now, the Rick that shows up in the world now is, I continue to do a lot of research, and that research inspires plants that are really important in the world that we are living in. The world that we are living in is very different than my world when I was in school, right?
Mm,
It's very, very different. And one of the contributing factors is we've emerged from a pandemic.
mm.
And, what has that pandemic done to us and what does it continue to do in the long haul to us?
Do you
And
mean societally or physically, the actual virus?
yeah, the actual, 20, what was it, 20 to 23 virus, you know,
Mm.
that took the world by storm. And, you know, one of the things I'm realizing is that we probably, most of us who either have had the virus or who have had the vaccine and or the virus have our immune systems compromised.
Mm.
And, we're living with probably an immune system that's been probably somewhat hijacked. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I really appreciate that you're saying both because I think there are people trying to choose one or the other as the big baddie, to really focus in on, to create enemies around. And it neglects the important conversation of actually exploring, well, if you did have the virus, vaccine or not, then what does that mean? If you did have the vaccine, virus or not, what does that mean for you? And how can we support the rebuild of healthy immune response either way? Or you had the combination. And I think we're not having nuanced discussions about this. Can you help us explore, from the immune system being hijacked perspective, vaccine or virus or both, what you've been researching and what you've been finding? Because I think a lot of people are really stuck fighting each other on the internet instead of productively moving forward with the support and the knowledge we need.
Yeah. And Alex, I personally don't get involved in all
Yeah,
of that,
neither.
you know, the
Definitely
inside back
not.
and forth. It's not
Not
my place.
productive. Yeah.
No, but it is important for me to understand what is long haul and what is continuing to go on in the body.
Mm,
And one thing I do know is that as a part of our immune system being compromised from the virus itself, we also have reduced capacity for detoxification.
hmm,
And if we want to clear out those spike proteins that are lingering in the body, we need to really pay attention to the liver clearing mechanism. We also need to pay attention to the mechanism that really helps to promote cellular energy, proper cellular maintenance and metabolism, and think about what is interfering with that. And
mm.
I don't know if you want me to get more
Oh,
scientific.
go for it. We are nerds in this
Are you,
community, so you
are
can
you
go
there?
as deep as you want. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I've been interested in, this goes back to naturopathic school, is this concept of mTOR. Have you heard of
Hmm.
mTOR before?
But please just unpack it for the
I'll
beginners.
unpack
It's
it
all
for
good.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it stands for the mammalian target of rapamycin.
Mm.
And they found that, well, I'll kind of unpack it a little further. Back in 1972, on an island known as Easter Island, there was a bacteria that was discovered in the soil, and that bacteria was called rapamycin. And rapamycin eventually was that bacteria was eventually studied, and it became the source of a drug called rapamycin. The bacteria is not rapamycin itself. The drug that was named after its discovery was called rapamycin. And the interesting thing about rapamycin as it was researched was that it was found first to help diabetes. Then it was found to actually have some effect on other types of disorders. And then it was found to actually possibly be something that could promote longevity and regenerate life. And this is what caught my attention. And this pathway, the mTOR pathway, is a pathway that actually inhibits the functions of cell mechanisms, cell energy, cell productivity, and cell viability. And so if you were to take a drug called rapamycin, you might inhibit this mTOR pathway, which is a certain function of the mTOR pathway is not so beneficial for the body for longevity. And
yeah, I've heard Peter Attia speak about this, which was, yeah.
And what's interesting to me is that there are a lot of plants that are, quote, rapamycin mimetics. So what I'm saying is you don't have to necessarily take the drug called rapamycin, but rapamycin only works by virtue of its actions on what's known as the cyclic AMPK pathway. You've probably heard of that, the cyclic adenosine monophosphate kinase pathway. Yeah. And so it works on that pathway, which can be beneficial for cellular longevity and protecting cellular integrity. But there are rapamycin mimetics in the plant world.
And a mimetic is something that does something in a similar way to a drug or vice versa.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it acts like in this case, rapamycin would act in the body. And what are those plants? I'll mention a few of them: turmeric, astragalus, schizandra berry.
Favorite so far. Nice.
Yeah, our favorites, right? You asked me what am I doing with plants today? What do I like?
Oh, schizandra is just like, when I discovered it, I love it. I just love the feeling.
It's a constitutional remedy for me, and giving all that liver support. But then you also have compounds that are in many plants, like resveratrol, berberine. Green tea is a very strong rapamycin mimetic. So think about what we do in our daily life. I have some beautiful oolong green tea that I make a pot of every day, and then I'm taking astragalus and schizandra berry almost every day. I put a powder with those two herbs in my meals, and I take turmeric capsules, and so I'm supplementing these rapamycin type mimetics into my daily lifestyle.
Yeah, and what a surprise. We find the answer in nature. I think we do all this study in labs and come up with these drugs, and it's like, oh yeah, well, we've got this plant and that plant that can pretty much do the same thing. And so do we know whether these plant mimetics of rapamycin have any ill effects, negative side effects on certain people some people might need to avoid? This show is possible every week thanks to our podcast partners and you, our listeners. And I want to introduce the Aussies who are listening to the Marker Sun Care product. It's the Bambino Kids sunscreen, SPF 50, a huge 25% zinc oxide, which makes it extremely protective against both UVA and UVB rays. And it's reef safe, no nanoparticles, none of those dodgy, harsh preservatives that we see in the media time and again with mainstream sunscreens coming under fire. And you have 20% off for the month of August with the code LOWTOXLIFE. So I would definitely urge you to give this one a try, and Marker Sun Care literally has you covered. Yes, I went there.
Well, in the literature, if you take rapamycin long term, it could have some backwards effect.
Yeah, exactly. So I
Yeah,
know that about the drug. And
yeah,
that's why I was interested. Like, do we know anything about any types of people that need to
yeah.
avoid any of those plants?
Not that I'm aware of. A lot of these herbs, like you mentioned, schizandra I say astragalus, these are herbs that are used in Chinese medicine, and are typically used for a long period of time.
Mm,
They go, especially astragalus, it acts deeper in the body, so it takes a little bit longer to impact the immune system. If I
mm-hmm.
were to say to you, Alex, what two herbs might I take or might we take for our immune health over a long period of time, it would be astragalus and schizandra berry.
Yeah, wow. And have you done any research on the same herbs and supporting people who had vaccine injury from COVID vaccines? Or
We
that's a bit harder to do?
the research we did, this was interesting because I'm not sure how much you studied on the institute that I established.
I
Uh,
had, I mean, it's just basically super impressive. That's how much I
it
know
is.
so far. It's
It is. And the
incredible.
nice thing
Mm,
about it is it's very close in proximity to Arizona State, ASU, Arizona State University, where we have access to a bio level 3 safety lab to test
okay.
herbs, in this case, against the live COVID virus. So
Wow.
when COVID was when COVID emerged, we went to work, and the researchers over at the institute asked me if I knew what herbs would we study. So I gave them a list of 80 herbs, and we quickly reduced it to 40 and then 10. And then we started to look at those 10. And this is all in vitro, but in vitro with the live COVID virus. We started looking at those 10 in vitro and seeing which herbs would have a strong impact on destroying the virus. And we reduced it down to four. And yeah, and there is one herb specifically that stands out of the four. And it's not astragalus and it's not schizandra, but it's one herb which we're still, to this day, what, 3 years later, still trying to understand which part of the phytochemical profile is actually triggering this plant to do what it's doing. The name of the plant is sweet wormwood. Have you heard of that before?
Mm-hmm. Is
Uh,
sweet wormwood different to if I would buy, I know I use MediHerb, which is an Australian brand here, and it just says wormwood on the front. Is it different?
it could be. There are many
Could be.
wormwoods. Could be.
Mm.
So I'm talking about sweet Annie, which is
Mm-hmm.
another common name for sweet wormwood, or Artemisia annua, which is the genus and species. Um,
I've never
sweet,
want to run to my cabinet more than this moment to find out if that's the one I've got. But wow, okay, so take us through what you found with sweet
well,
wormwood.
I'll take you through what I can share with you, what we
Mm,
found,
okay.
because the finding isn't over yet.
Mm.
There's still research going on. um, First of all, the herb wasn't new to us. This herb takes us back to the time of malaria, where they isolated a constituent from sweet wormwood called artemisian, and to treat malaria. And
Oh,
so remember that?
yeah, well, can I just tell you a quick story on that? My naturopath, my first naturopath who since had to move back to Germany to care for elderly parents, she'd been practicing for 30 years, um, was a brilliant diagnostic mind. And she used to make me, who was allergic to mosquitoes, and just seemed to always get viruses in the summer. She made me take wormwood in the summer. Just that was something I would take 3 days on, 4 days off every week to just keep bolstering my immune system against mosquitoes. So it's just so funny that you mentioned that because I think she was ahead of the curve. I always thought that, but yeah,
Well,
interesting.
it kind of, for me, the go-to to sweet wormwood at the time came out of my knowledge of Chinese herbs. I travel to China twice a year for longevity treatments.
Mm.
And one of the things I notice that they include every time I go there, my mentor, Dr. Liu, orders a dish made with sweet wormwood.
Hmm.
And we always have this conversation about, well, wow, this is an important herb in Armataria medica, and they're using it in their dishes, in their as a
In their
vegetable
food.
in
Yeah.
their food in China. And so I took some interest in that, and because a lot of people eat it every single day when it's in season in China. And
Wow.
yeah, it's true. So sweet wormwood has artemisian in it.
Hmm.
It's one of the major compounds. But when we started studying it, it wasn't solely artemisian that was active. In fact, it was only active in the presence of another chemical in the plant, much, much smaller amount than of a presence in the plant than artemisian. And that particular chemical has not been identified at this point, but we know that it's necessary for artemisian to be effective.
Hmm.
And I actually, one of the things we talk about, I don't know if we're going to talk about regenerative farming here, but
Oh, we are
oh,
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah.
But one of the things I've learned lately is that when you farm regeneratively and do what I'm doing with all the bioferments and all the amendments we're using, adding biochar and things like that to the soil, um, you get a population of bacteria in the soil. One of those bacterial organisms is Bacillus subtilis.
Hmm.
Have you heard of that
Yeah.
organism before? It's commonly found in many probiotics, so it's a
Yeah.
very healthy microorganism to consume. I have found so Bacillus subtilis itself lives inside the cells of plants, and it acts inside the cells of plants as an endophyte. I don't know if that's a new term, but
Endophyte. Need an explainer on that one, Doc.
okay. Endophytes are instigators of secondary metabolites. I think, and we've done some research on some plants, that these are the organisms that actually trigger on a plant to be effective. In other words,
Hmm.
yes, it has the primary chemical constituent, but without the endophyte present, it may not be active. So there are
Got
other
it.
secondary metabolites that make a major metabolite active. And I think in Sweet Annie, what we're looking at is an endophyte that's secondary to artemisian that's causing it to be active. And you may know from taking wormwood, maybe if you've tasted it, it's a very, very, very bitter herb.
It is.
And its energetics are cooling, very cooling. But being bitter, it acts on liver systems and helps to clear liver qi stagnation and, help to support, anything that's an impediment to the immune system. It will tend to work on clearing it out.
Hmm.
So this was one of the more important herbs that we discovered in our COVID research, doing in vitro studies on the live virus. That Sweet Annie was one of the more important ones.
Mm. Wow, that just makes so much sense because I quite often take wormwood for a couple of days at the instruction of my naturopath now. If I feel like I'm coming down with something, that's in my cocktail of like clear it out, get it out, fight it off. And I've just always found it to be such an incredible herb. Like, would you say that's one that is good to be working with a practitioner on?
If you're working with a specific health complaint, and it's kind of been a long-standing complaint, it might be good to have some guidance because herbs like this are very strong
Mm,
and they probably aren't intended to be taken for longer periods of time.
yeah.
You need to know how to use these herbs, but they're safe, but in the long term, it's better to have guidance on if you're not experienced.
Yeah, thanks for that. And as you were talking about that, it also made me think about how people will say, oh no, I need to get that brand. And they might not know anything about herbal medicine, but they've figured that there's a particular brand that seems to do better for them. And now that we know about an endophyte, for example, And we know about the bud, the berry, the leaf, the root, and all the different things that would make a formulation or a little capsule that we take really powerful versus actually that doesn't work very well. I'd imagine in herbal medicine, well, I don't even have to imagine. I know from being a subscriber of the Consumer Lab website, which I find amazing for showing what's actually in things and what's actually working. There are herbal supplements and there are herbal supplements. So, this is where I want to get down to regenerative agriculture and how, as both a herbalist and a business owner wanting to make great products, you decided after selling Gaia, which is a well known global brand, what to do next and how to do it as best as possible. Because I'd imagine that's been quite a labor of love.
Yeah, it's in my journey after I did sell Gaia was not just what's next, but also what kind of impact can I make?
Mm,
And the thing about regenerative farming and the whole journey that I went on was not just about doing it over again, but it was about how to regenerate life. And and I'm I could have retired. I'm at that age where I could have retired, but I don't believe in, leaving your ikigai, which is plants are my ikigai for life. So
mm,
I just needed to continue the journey. And so my journey was to buy a farm and build an institute or, set up an institute. And then understand a lot about this journey of regenerative agriculture and what it can do to regenerate life.
mm.
Because we are dealing with the formative forces of nature that are unseen, but that are basically formative, not just in what's unseen, but everything that impacts our world today.
Yeah,
And that's a powerful statement.
that is a very powerful statement.
And I'm talking about the soil food web,
Mm,
things that you and I do not see. And when we're out walking in soil, but that in healthy soil that exist. And, what this intelligence, if you will, how it collaborates together, all the different components of it, how it collaborates together to bring about a restructuring of life and a restructuring of our environment. And, it's as though, the wisdom in this orchestration of this soil food web is so profound that you would hardly be able to comprehend. Can something so unseen yet be so profound and have such a broad impact on life? And to me,
mm,
this is what regenerative life is about, starting from soil to soul.
yeah.
And yeah.
And the thing that often amazes me and just literally blows my mind is that you can take a piece of land that has been harmed so devastatingly, extracted for everything it's worth, topsoil dead, everything seemingly dead, and with a few tools, life can reorganize itself. The soil food web can come to life again on a piece of land that you would leave for dead. And I feel like it's such a beautiful parallel to humans who get to those moments where they're left for dead, and yet you can come back to life given the right tools, given the right um, uh, inputs. And so Rick, you buy this farm. Was it already in? I mean, was this the? No.
I
So
think I know what
can
you're going
we?
to. I had to breathe life into death from death.
Yeah.
I I
So
had
tell us about that.
the journey, yeah. Uh, I thought the soil was pretty good. We did all the proper testing, so it was really properly mineralized. It had good cation exchange. It had, topsoil was very, very healthy. However, when we began to, it was a sugarcane farm, and so you can imagine monocropping for a long time, and
Mm,
then God knows what chemicals might have been used. And fortunately, for the last 5 years before I bought it, there were no chemicals used. But I had to regenerate this soil, and Alex, it's being short of amazing. It's been so impressive what has happened when you apply the proper um, teachings of the soil food web. So can I walk you through
Yes,
the
please.
process? Yeah. So when you start the journey of regenerating life in the soil, you know, in organic farming, we use compost and we use cover cropping and we use crop rotation. We might use organic fertilizers. But what has to happen in regenerative farming is you have to kind of, you know, blank your mind of the concept of tilling the land. Tilling land is a real problem because every time you till it and plow it, it destroys the soil food web, the family of organisms that are in the soil that are making life happen. So then you have to start over and over. So the first and most important thing is no-till farming. And that means that you need a practice of building a carpet of green over your soil, whatever it
Hmm.
is. If it's grass, if it's a cover crop, if it's, bushes, whatever it might be, you need a carpet of green. And it is a green which the plant material which you're growing, which will sequester the carbon from the atmosphere. So between the photosynthesis, the capturing of light energy from the sun and sequestering carbon from the atmosphere, these are taken into the plant structure and brought down through the structure into the roots. And when the carbon is entering into the roots, there are fungi, beneficial fungi and bacteria that start to consume all that carbon.
Hmm.
When they consume all that carbon, there are other microorganisms in the soil called protozoa that start to consume the bacteria that consume the carbon. And when that happens, you get the release of this amazingly uh, usable form of nitrogen for the plant called ammonium or ammonium nitrate. And so suddenly all this nitrogen starts to feed the roots of the plant, and the plant starts to shoot out new tendrils, new root structures, and it starts to have more and more, hundreds of times more access points to the nutrients in the soil. So
Hmm.
suddenly you start the journey of nutrient upcycling, taking and bringing nutrients from the soil at a greater rate up into the roots of the plant to promote plant growth. And this is essentially the beginning of the soil food web starting to regenerate life. So it's building more biomass, it's building more nutrient dense plant material to which we consume, and you're sequestering, as more and more of that's growing, you're sequestering more and more carbon, drawing down carbon in the atmosphere. So it's a whole cycle that's starting to reestablish itself. And I think it's
Mm.
quite amazing how quickly it can be done.
That's the thing, right? I've been seeing reforestation and reversing of desertification projects all around the world for like 15 years now since I got interested in it. And I just, it hurts my heart to then see an Elon Musk tweet that says, I've got $100 million for anyone who can prove that they've been able to take carbon out of the atmosphere. And I'm just like, can you just give out a whole bunch of regen ag grants? Like, that's a really great way to spend that $100 million because there's farmers doing it all around the world.
Yeah, just not too long ago, I just returned back from El Salvador. At the
Hmm.
invitation of the government, the president of El Salvador invited me there to talk to the government people, which I did. The vice president, all the ministers of the government, all the members of the World Bank were there who were funding this project,
Mm.
um, and other members who were kind of like in the farming community. Um, the whole objective from the president down was to make El Salvador the world's first regenerative agriculture country.
Hmm.
Now, I don't
Wow.
know if they will actually step up, but the thinking is that the World Bank was there because they had an interest in funding this, and
That's exciting.
that's exciting.
That is so exciting to know that that conversation's happening. Wow. Tell me how it becomes you, Rick, that gets that call and has that invitation. Like, what was you just the phone ring one day and you're like, sure, I'll come over. Like, or were
Yeah,
you in conversation? Had you been working there?
a neighbor of mine here in Costa Rica, she used to live in El Salvador, and is well connected to a
Hmm.
number of people in the government there, and they called her, and she told them she knew this person, me, here in Costa Rica. So there are a couple people in the government that came to visit me to look at the farm and thought it was amazing, and then that started everything spinning, and then the invitation came.
Wow.
Yeah.
And if you have people who are stewards of land right now out there listening to this thinking, oh, I believe in regen, but my partner doesn't, and I really want to do that with our farm. And like, how can we inspire more people to understand this isn't just beneficial to the land itself, but can actually be economically beneficial? Because I
Well, it
think one
is.
of, you know,
It is. I can give you a bit of statistics from my
yes,
own
please.
experience. We grew turmeric first year organically before we became regenerative certified and before we started applying all the bioferments. We were getting about uh, 15,000 kilograms of turmeric roots per hectare for our yield.
Mm.
And the very next year, after putting all the bioferments, which we can talk about what they are,
Yeah,
and
that'd be great.
applying the bioferments, the vermicompost, all the vermicompost teas, and all the other types of applications for regenerative farming, and using an implement that actually comes from Australia, called the yeoman's plow.
Hmm. Go
Yeah.
us. Yeah.
Grow up. We should talk about that because it's amazing what it can do when you
Okay. Well,
combine.
so finish the thought, and then we're coming back to that, and we're coming back to the bioferments.
Yeah, so 15,000 kgs per hectare organically. 1 year into regen, 80,000. Same hectare, 80,000.
Wow.
And there's an and, not a but here. And the curcuminoid content went up from 2.5% to over 8%.
Hmm.
That's the therapeutic value.
Yeah. So it's better for health, and it's better for economy, and it's better for planet. So people win, planet win, purse strings win. Like that's the triple win. That's what we want.
That's what you want. And here, um, it's Alex, what we talked about just summarized it. I mean, I didn't go into depth. There's a lot more to the whole soil food web cycling of nutrients. But what we just talked about is what happened. We recycled nitrogen, which made more roots in the plant, captured more nutrients, produced more biomass, and increased nutrient density in the crop. So that's why the nutrient density is the 80,000 kilos per hectare. And I'm sorry, that's the biomass, and then the nutrient density is the curcuminoids. Um, it's just remarkable to see. And, I've been collecting a lot of data about what happens in regenerative soil, and the role that earthworms play.
Mm.
'Cause when we first started, we measured the amount of earthworms in our soils. There were only 25 earthworms per square meter in year one. Now, 4 years later, we have over 400 earthworms per square meter. And
That's
what
incredible.
are the
What does it do?
earthworms? What
Yeah.
do they do? They are manufacturers of soil particulates that are uniform. They create portals in the soil, and they allow for proper water absorption into the soil, prevent erosion from the soil, but also create the kind of space for roots to grow through, and all of the dynamism of the soil food web to manufacture proper soil aggregation, the uniform particle size of soil, which is uniform for root growth, uniform for nutrient upcycling, uniform for water retention in the soil, and so forth.
Mm.
So, to have more earthworms and measure it like that is telling me, we've made tremendous impact on our pathway to regeneration.
How fantastic. I mean, it's incredible. So the earthworms really do, and I've spoken with a couple of amazing guests over the years on this. They improve the entire communication of the network
Yeah,
and the capacity of the network when we talk about both the drawdown of carbon and the draw in of water in more sustainable ways. You know, it doesn't just bounce off and run and cause a flood. The earthworms are responsible for actually ensuring
exactly.
it gets down there.
They are. So
Mm.
God bless them. And
Mm.
we've seen it because we get a lot around. I'm in the tropics. And just in May this year, we had, I don't know your measurement scale, but we had 65 inches of rain in 1 month.
That is
Our
a lot. Yeah.
That is a lot
Yeah.
of rain. And we had no ponding of water, no erosion, no runoff. All the water got absorbed, and we had no root rot, just, everything normal.
Wow.
Thanks to the worms.
I founded Low Tox Life in 2009, and as the community grew, I started to identify areas that people needed structured learning. And that is when the first e-course, Go Low Tox, was born in 2014. Since then, I've worked with scientists and health professionals to bring you low-cost courses to help you shortcut your goals with whatever you're challenged by right now. So whether you're new to going low tox and you'd love a framework and some really helpful suggestions across 22 different topics covering everyday life, or maybe you're working on an inflammation picture and you just want some help to calm the farm, whether you're on a fertility journey, either having trouble or wanting to optimize, we literally have courses for these and more. Head to lowtoxlife.com, hit the course tab, and enjoy. Well, I think that last 10 minutes is a very good clip to play to a resistant partner on a farm where you're wanting
There
to
you
go
go.
regen and they're not. That's there's the infomercial. Let's hop to it.
I love it.
And I love that. Okay, and so in terms of success stories, you saw it with turmeric. Is there anything else you've already started to see it with?
Yeah, Tulsi. Do you know holy basil?
Oh, of course. Yes.
Yeah, we saw the similar phenomena with Tulsi. The biomass harvest went from 5,000 kgs per hectare to over 11,000 kgs per hectare. Pretty dramatic, and the robustness of the plants, and you holy basil. There's constituent wise, there's a class of compounds called polyphenols, which in that includes eugenol and rosmarinic acid and so forth. And these are important phytochemicals for us. And they, again, went way up. Everything we're
Wow.
doing, Alex, is producing so much more phytochemistry than I ever, I've been practicing herbalism for 35 years. I've
Mm,
never seen anything like the nutrient upcycling in our plants than we're seeing on this farm.
that's incredible. Truly incredible.
And you know what? I'm
You
sorry.
must be like a kid in a candy store, like seeing these results happen in live time on your property.
I mentioned the yeoman's plow from Australia.
Mm.
Do you know this implement?
No, I don't. I'm sure all of our farmers listening will, but no, not me personally. I'm a city gal.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, the yeoman's plow, we took an interest to it because it's very compatible with regenerative farming. It's not really a plow per se. The yeoman's plow has shanks that are about 24 inches tall, and on the bottom part of the shank is a pointed shaft, which kind of allows the shank to go down and into the soil. So it doesn't turn the soil over, it just opens up about a 1 inch space, but 24 inches deep. And for us, since we're putting so much bioferment that we make ourselves into our soil, we're injecting 24 inches deep the bioferment right into the soil thanks to the yeoman's plow. and getting it way down in where, to build more life, more soil food web dynamism deeper into the soil. So it's been a wonderful thing to see. And I would have to say that between the earthworms using the yeoman's plow and attending to the soil food web, we are seeing what we're seeing this year with all the rain. No flooding, no ponding, no standing water. No root rotting because of standing water. None of it.
And these are things that have been plaguing farmers, organic farmers as well, for decades.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whew. Okay. A last question, and I'd like to ask it about doing good business, because I think people feel a little bit jaded by big corporates and monopolies and concentration of power, wealth, size of businesses. And I feel like the regenerative space, I've never met a mean regenerative business owner. I've never met an over greedy regenerative business owner. And there's just a genuine sense of care that comes through an entire organization. How have you personally found stewarding this type of business, even through the research facility as well, Ric? And seeing what the benefits actually look like when you cast your mind over everything from the people to the land to the P&L. Like there's benefits everywhere. There's plenty for everyone is what I see in regenerative businesses. But I'd love to have you take us for a little look under the hood of what that looks like for you guys.
It's really important because it taps into your corporate culture and your corporate values. And some time ago, I started thinking about what are the regenerative principles of nature, and can we emulate those principles in corporate America? Can I bring them into my business? Can I abide by them? And what are they? And so, having asked that question, I also took a look at the formative principles of naturopathic medicine. And since you are from a country where naturopathic medicine is legally practiced, you probably understand some of these. But we have adopted these principles in our corporate culture. And so the first one is the vis medicatrix naturae. That's a Latin term which translates to the healing power of nature. And that means that if you really understand the complexity and totality of life, you should embrace that nature will heal when given an opportunity to do so. And all we have to do is step out of the way. So the healing power of nature. And the second one is primum non nocere. Primum non nocere means first do no harm. And this applies you look all around out in nature, and nature is evolutionary. Nature isn't destructive, it's evolutionary. Sometimes it means that some things have to go through and end a cycle and start a new cycle, but nature ultimately is evolutionary. Everything is co-evolving together. And so we cannot interfere with that. And if we have the attitude in corporate culture that we are showing up to do no harm, especially with plants, that we have to maintain an attitude that everything we do in our innovation, our formulation, our research, our making of medicine should lead to improvement and not cause harm in any way. The third and fourth principles of naturopathic medicine are tolle causum and tolle totum. Tolle causum means treat the cause, and tolle totum means treat the whole person. And they kind of speak to themselves. But in business, you cannot solve a problem on the level of the problem. You have to the underlying root cause. You don't support, the idea that there's siloing going on in your employee relations. People are siloing in little groups. That's causing disruption. And you have to understand, well, what is the cause of this, and how do we really treat the totality of the situation. So I've learned that, really understanding, business in a manner which applies these two principles is so very, very important. The fifth one is something that's dear to me, very, very dear to me, is I remember this from one of my teachers. He said, many patients are looking for a good doctor. I'm a doctor, but I'm looking for a good patient. And meaning that, he wants to show up in a way that's beyond just being a doctor. And that speaks to the fifth principle, which is docere ac docere, which means teacher as the leader, and not the boss as the leader, or not the CEO as the leader. The leader is really one who shows up and guides and teaches and serves and practices and emulates the process and invigorates the process of receptivity and reciprocity. So, when a teacher teaches, you have to have somebody there who's receptive to what you're teaching. That's the receptivity. And then the reciprocity flows. If you're receptive, I'm going to be much more willing to share. And in business, that's how a business will grow, when you bring out knowledge and experience that way. And the sixth one, the final one, is preventare, prevention. Always practice prevention. And there's no better practice in nature than attending to the soil food web as a preventative measure for, our whole, when we look at wellness and when we look at wanting to build up this physiology, this body back into a regenerative state, we have to practice prevention. And soil food web gets us there. And in business, you can set up your business models all day long and put in business culture that are preventative. And you can make business decisions that really support your value stream by taking a preventative attitude. So we like to subscribe to those six principles of naturopathic medicine, of nature cure, of nature itself, as the guiding forces of business culture and business leadership.
How inspiring, Rick. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I think it's an incredibly powerful parallel to draw between the naturopathic medicine rules, so guidelines, so to speak, and how you can set up a great business in 2025, or how you can move your business towards being truly great and truly preventative. We're such a put the fires out crisis culture that the magic is in prevention and building something that doesn't need to keep moving into crisis, right?
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right.
Well, thank you so much for spending this hour with us. I feel like we definitely covered a lot.
Yeah,
If
perhaps not going so deep, but we talked a lot about these
Yeah, but
things.
sometimes I think people really benefit from understanding the magic of a lot of different sides to, especially when you've had such a long career. And, we could do a 3-day seminar really about all the things you could teach us, Rick, but I really appreciate you sharing what you have today. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate your brilliant questions and your passion. So thank you, Alex, for how you show up in the world.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us in listening to this week's show. If you're not already subscribed or following the show on whatever platform you listened, please do that now. It helps enormously in terms of getting this show out to more people. Another way you can connect and support the work we do so that we can support you in your low tox life is join us in the Low Tox Club. You'll get access to amazing member masterclasses where we invite some of our best show guests for a live Q&A with members. You also have great shopping discounts from low tox businesses and honestly, the nicest low tox community Facebook group that exists on the internet. I do hope you join us there. It costs just the price of a coffee a month on average. Head to lowtoxlife.com, hit the Explore tab, and Low Tox Club is the first option there. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.